Oh, okay. Well, here, guys. Welcome to a new episode of Stay Till the Credits podcast. Today, we're joined by some very special guests from our friends at So Much to Tell podcast. They are part of a duo that talks about the Raimi trilogy, our favorite Spider-Man, and Peter, who is part of the duo, is part of the Wojciechko brothers, who have been in our episodes before, and he's joined with his friend Sean. Here you go, guys.
Well, thanks for introducing us, guys. Yeah.
Happy to be here. Thank you so much for having us. I'm thrilled to talk about the topic we have for today.
I think
Yeah.
thrilled is an understatement from Sean.
It's a feeling of
he's
pure
over the moon.
euphoria from Sean.
It's so rare that I get to talk Simpsons. So I'm just all of those years and years of watching the show and the movie. I'm ready to go.
And I
There we
should
go.
say, well, being Peter, by the way, to be clear, I should say that in contrast to Sean, I have almost seen nothing of The Simpsons. I think maybe I saw an episode maybe 15 years ago on TV at my grandmother's house. I couldn't tell you what happened even. So but I rewatched The Simpsons just yesterday. Well, I'm sorry, I watched The Simpsons movie just yesterday for the first time. So going in as someone who'd never really seen the show.
First time.
So I'm bringing that particular perspective to this little retrospective of ours.
Well,
Wow.
Can I just ask Peter that did watching the movie yesterday, having almost no previous experience with the show in any significant way, did watching the movie make you want to watch any of the episodes? Did it make you want to sort of start getting into the classic era of The Simpsons, or even the new era, if you're into that? Did it kind of whet your appetite at all for the show, or you think it'll
If you're into that sort of thing, if you like doing that to yourself, watching the new episodes. No, I definitely certainly came away with a greater appreciation for the artistry, the comedy, and even sort of like the pop cultural history that The Simpsons apparently deals in.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Well, I didn't even introduce myself.
Oh, I'm
we didn't introduce ourselves. No, it's fine. Not you guys' fault. We forgot. We always forget. We're so bad at this.
That's like our trademark at this point.
Yeah, pretty much.
Jump
I'm
into
JP. Here you go.
Oh, I'm Sebastian.
Now your turn.
I forgot again.
There we go. Yeah, there we go.
Yeah,
every single episode we forget.
Mm-hmm.
We're so bad at that.
Super unprofessional,
Anyways,
but who cares? So today we're talking about specifically the
We've only been doing
movie.
this for a year. Yeah. Oh, yeah. By the way, guys, just recently it was our 1 year anniversary of our podcast. Yay! We've done like 36 episodes, I think, in a year. Yeah. So, I mean, I did a TikTok about it, but might as well since we're recording it right now. Thank you guys so much for all the support. We have over 1,000 listens on Spotify and all the streaming, and also over 1,000 views on YouTube. So thank you guys so much for the support, and also, of course, all the followers on TikTok. So yeah, just want to give you guys a little thank you there.
And here's to many more.
Yeah, of course. Thank you. And also, I mean, since we're already here, I mean, it was barely this beginning of the episode still, but please listen to So Much to Tell podcast, also on Spotify. There we go. Give you guys another little shout out there. But anyways,
I won't complain.
Today we're going to talk about the Simpsons movie, as you guys have heard already. The Simpsons movie not recently, actually, in a couple of days, actually, it's gonna have its 15th anniversary. It came out in 2007, and this movie, as you may have heard by Peter, is the first time that he's ever watched it. I've only seen it like twice. I don't know about you, Sebastian.
Yeah, I think this might be my second time watching it through its entirety, because I think last time I saw it was probably just like the end part of the movie, like on FX, like a couple years back.
Mm-hmm.
So it was really fun to rewatch it, especially in English, because growing up, I only ever saw The Simpsons in Spanish, because we're Mexican. We grew up with that.
Yeah.
So.
As a small anecdote at the beginning here, interestingly enough, I was reading that Hans Zimmer apparently had the hardest time translating the Spider Pig parody music into Spanish. I don't know why,
Hmm.
but because apparently he also, he did the versions for in the same, chorus, did the same versions for all the different translations
Hmm.
of the song. So
That's interesting.
I don't know.
I don't remember the way that sounds in Spanish. I'm gonna have to look it up
Me
later.
neither. Yeah, me neither. I genuinely don't remember.
Because it might
But
be
yeah,
really long. Because pig, what's pig in Spanish? JP, marrano or cerdo?
marrano or cerdo. Yeah, it's
Yeah,
either one of those two.
So cerdo
Uh,
araña. I guess it would be kind of complicated.
yeah, it's kind of weird. That's generally that's interesting because I never think about that, like the translating
Yeah,
everything into Spanish.
Yeah.
Like to us, it's just so normal,
yeah.
but like for other people, like
I
that,
I
like that must be so
I
difficult.
never think about the localization of things.
Oh,
Yeah, because you got to match the syllables
Mm-hmm.
and still tell a tight joke.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah,
You,
I was
you
and
just
gotta
gonna
make
sometimes they have to
sure.
change the joke completely, like because it just doesn't translate.
Yeah, you gotta make sure the joke lands too. Because
exactly. Yeah, I feel like with translation, it's tough because some jokes are so specific or context specific. Like even just for example, if it was still in English, but it was like a British series, it might be hard just cultural translation to understand
Yeah,
yeah,
some
for
of
that
the
That's
sure.
too.
jokes.
true.
Yeah, British
There's
humor is pretty dry and different too.
well, there's this book. I got this book not too long ago. It was within the last year. It was called like Bigger and Better Simpsons Guide, and they published this back in the '90s. But whoever wrote it was British, and so they went through episode by episode through the first. I think it was the first 11 seasons at the time. At the time it was current. So this book was written, I think, around 2000. But anyway, they had all of these little notes explaining the different jokes for people in the UK. Like they'd explain things about baseball, about different
Oh.
American restaurants, about different all these things that in the U.S. we just kind of are familiar with. So it's very interesting that The Simpsons has it has such an international appeal, and it's translated and dubbed in so many different languages. I think recently they started doing it even in Arabic and airing it in the Middle East, and it's just almost like a quintessentially American show, but it's enjoyed by people all over the world. So I think that's so cool.
No, yeah,
But I think that's really interesting. Just that your first exposure to the movie was in Spanish, and like I said, I never, um, I studied French for many years, and I remember at one point, one of the things they tell you to do if you're learning a language is to try to watch TV shows in the language. And I tried watching The Simpsons in French. Like I think on Disney Plus, I tried doing it with the French dub, and it's tricky because I can kind of understand some of it, but it's interesting. Just as I said, to see it enjoyed by so many people all over the world.
yeah, no, and I was gonna say, I think it's like you said, it's a pretty American show, but it has so much appeal around the world. I remember when it came out, um, especially like in parts of Mexico, there was a lot of merchandise for the movie. So I don't remember there JP, if you remember Tazos. I don't know if there was any Simpsons Tazos,
Yeah,
but I feel like there was. So
Tazos. I'm pretty sure you guys don't know what
they're
tazos
no,
are.
they're like Pogs. If you guys remember Pogs.
Remember
Okay.
Al? He's back in Pog form.
I,
That's a Simpsons reference, and
That-
I only know
I-
that because Sean said that to me before, and then had to explain it.
That's from the episode Bart sells his soul. Just
oh man,
Isn't that a Halloween episode?
what's that?
Isn't that a Halloween episode? Am I confusing it?
No, no, it was that it wasn't a Treehouse of Horror. It was an
Treehouse of
episode where Bart sold his soul to Millhouse, and the joke. So that episode is from 1995, and at the time, Pogs were really popular, and they were making fun of Alf, like a very 80s fad. But now the
Mhm.
joke is that Pogs themselves were like such an extremely 90s fad. So the joke has kind of come full circle. But yeah,
Well,
that's really interesting that they were like Pogs. So because I know one of the more quote like I'm a member of like different Simpsons Facebook groups, and that's one of the jokes that gets quoted all the time. The remember blank, it's back in blank form. It's a joke formula I see quite often.
well, on the note of it, the global nature of The Simpsons, I did a little perusing down the Wikipedia page for the movie to sort of balance out my lack of knowledge in general on the subject, and I was
should've done that.
interested to. Well, I was interested to read sort of some of the the global promotions they did. Like for example, there's a town in Canterbury, New Zealand called Springfield, and 20th Century Fox put up like a giant pink donut in the town, to
Oh.
That's
promote the
cool.
movie. In London, they put up this big double-decker, like sized inflatable spider pig, to promote the movie. So they did these things all over the world. This was, it was 15 years ago, so I don't know if we all collectively remember super well, but apparently it was a pretty big deal at the time that The
No,
Simpsons was having a
I
movie.
could have never remembered that.
I
I don't remember any
I
promotion
don't
like that.
remember the promotion. I just remember after the movie came out, I remember a bunch of kids quoting a bunch of the jokes. Everyone was singing the Spider Pig song.
Yes, yeah.
And it's
Very,
weird because
very
like
monumental.
rewatching the movie, I haven't seen it in a long time, but I kind of remembered everything through just like osmosis and stuff. I remember like from the jokes and things like Spider Pig on the ceiling,
Right, right.
the dome. I remember the dome, the motorcycle. I don't know. It's weird. It was weird going back into this movie and being like, and remembering everything, and taking me back to like that time
Just
when it
unlocked
came out.
memories.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, well, I was pretty much the same. I mean, like I said, I hadn't seen the movie,
Mhm.
and yet just the trailer was so ingrained in the popular subconscious.
Oh, so you
You
saw a
know,
trailer before?
oh yeah, yeah. I mean, I remember seeing the trailer.
That's
Oh,
that's
okay.
what I
know,
remember from the time as well. I remember all the trailers had the Homer singing the Spider Pig song, and he's holding up the Spider Pig on the
Mhm.
ceiling, and that was
Right,
the
right.
trailer.
Right, I
So I
remember
know
that image very clearly,
yeah.
and the song being sung. That was in my head already. I remember that, this is the worst day of my life. The worst day of your life so
Oh
far.
yeah, yeah.
I remember that
That's
vividly
yeah.
just from the trailer. And
That's another
then,
joke that I see. I see that joke everywhere.
Yeah.
Even people that have never seen The Simpsons use that joke all the time
I
these days.
I had forgotten that it was from the movie. I thought it was just from from an episode.
yeah, me too.
Because I see it all the time, especially around like when winter or like summer comes out. It gets kind of like thrown around that this is like the coldest summer of your life so far, or your warmest
Right.
winter so far.
So yeah, so those are just a couple of things that me, as someone who's never seen The Simpsons, like that's just part of my headspace already. Just picked it up through osmosis.
Yeah. Well, apart from the actual Simpsons movie, I know Sean. I'm not even going to ask you because I know you love the Simpsons. But
Mhm.
Peter, oh, actually, no, you, Peter, you've never, you never really watched either the show, right?
No, this was really my first experience that I can tell you about. I mean, I think I watched one like 15 years ago. I vaguely remember sitting there, but I have no idea what happened. Homer was
You were
at
never
work. That's
scrolling
it.
it through TV and like, oh, it popped up, didn't watch it.
Never. I mean, not for any particular reason. It just never seemed, never really jumped out at me as something to watch. And maybe the fact that there's like a million episodes is a little bit scary
True.
to get into too. But no, I just
Wow.
How many seasons does it have? Do you guys know?
I think it
Season
currently has like
30
30 something.
It's like season 33 right now, I believe.
Oh wow.
Which is and I kind of made that joke earlier to
Yeah,
Peter about
33.
if you're into that sort of thing, watching the newer episodes, because it's I don't want to be one of those Simpsons fans that automatically kind of dismisses the newer stuff, because I think I watch a number of different people on YouTube that talk about the Simpsons a lot. One of them is this guy named The Real Jims. He does a great video about the Simpsons movie. He does a lot of great Simpsons content in general, and he tries to be very open-minded about the newer stuff, and I do as well. But I don't think there's any question, though, that all of the iconic moments that Simpsons fans tend to remember are from like the first, I would say, 8 seasons. The so-called golden age. And I can remember, I guess, like for me, it's very clear. Yeah, I watched The Simpsons from a very young age. I would say between season 7 and 12 are like what I remember the most, and so those episodes are the ones I'm the most familiar with. I played them on syndication, like every weeknight. There was like there were at least 2 or 3 episodes of The Simpsons on, from like 6 to 8 p.m. every single night. So I got to see a good bit of them just watching TV every night. It was like Simpsons, and I think either Family Guy or King of the Hill or something else, during that block. So it was, that was how I got introduced to a lot of the episodes. I don't remember when I first saw the movie, as it turns out. I mean, I know I saw the trailers, but I can't quite recall if I don't think I saw it in theaters. I think I probably saw it when we bought it on DVD. My family, at the time, in like the 2000s, if you had a minivan with a DVD player, like that was a big deal. And I remember eventually at some point around that time, we got a minivan with a DVD player. And the Simpsons Movie was one of the DVDs that we watched every time we went on like a long car trip. That and like Mr. Deeds, the Benchwarmers, a lot of some very forgettable 2000s movies, but Simpsons Movie was also part of the
Benchwarmers is
rotation.
really good.
All right.
Don't diss Benchwarmers.
Next episode, we're doing a double.
I love the Benchwarmers.
Next episode, we're doing a double feature. We're gonna do Mr. Deeds and the Benchwarmers.
I think Benchwarmers, like I don't know, that movie cracked me up.
That's gonna be a 3-hour episode with Sean just going.
Also in the Sandlot, we watched that one.
Oh, I love the
Sandlot
Sandlot.
too.
Sandlot's such a classic.
Yeah. So Simpsons Movie was in our rotation, and I know we watched it a few times at least that way. And I know I watched it within the last couple years. I know I watched it on Disney Plus, and so I haven't seen it more recently. But as I said, I definitely remember the main outline of the plot pretty well, and most of the memorable jokes.
So basically, Sean is saying that he can quote the entire movie. Basically.
Should we mention like a brief, outline of what happens for anyone who's listening who hasn't seen it?
Sure. Who wants to do it?
Yeah.
Well, I mean, basically, if I may, Sean.
Go ahead.
Yeah. Correct me
Someone
if I'm
who
wrong.
just saw the movie first. Yeah, he's gonna do the howling.
Well, correct me if I'm wrong, Sean. You're the expert here, but basically, it's like Homer gets a pig, Homer pollutes a lake. He ruins the local environment, which was an interesting. I didn't know that was going to be what the plot was, but he ruins the local environment, and ultimately, the EPA wants to wipe Springfield off the map, and so the town turns against the Simpsons, and the Simpsons flee to Alaska. But ultimately, the family decides to return to save the town, and Homer needs to overcome his selfishness to save the day, his family, and really himself.
That seems pretty accurate, but I would say you got one thing wrong. You got one thing wrong. They're not after the Simpsons. They're after just Homer. But
you're right. You're right. Yeah.
Yeah.
I'm worried about my
specifically. Yeah, because specifically, they're like, "Oh no, they're gonna kill us." They're like, "No, we just want Homer."
No, we just want you. Although, I was shocked by really the imagery of all the handful of nooses hung for them, and the one with the binky hanging from it for Maggie. So I don't know. I mean, I was kind of shocked to see that.
Yeah, it's pretty. Yeah, that angry mob scene is it's very interesting. Just first of all, because one of the things they did with that at the time they promoted it this way. In that angry mob, that the torch lit, the torches and the pitchforks and all that. Supposedly, if you pause it, you can see every single character that had ever been on The Simpsons to that point. So at that time, they were, I think, in season 18, between seasons 18 and 19. So if you pause during that angry mob as it's marching to the Simpson house, you can see every, even like, one-off characters from, earlier episodes. So you can see almost every single character that they ever had on the show to that point. So that's kind of cool if you're able to pause it and kind of go through and see, oh wow, there's
it's the end game of The Simpsons.
Yeah, exactly. It's like they brought a lot of these very obscure characters that were only in one episode, but they brought them back just for that. So that for that reason alone, it's a very interesting scene. But obviously, the violence and kind of the bloodlust in the crowd there is a little bit jarring. Because usually The Simpsons, it's a relatively lighthearted show. I mean, there's some episodes where things can get a little bit dicey, but overall, definitely a much darker tone than what you would see on an episode of the show. But I think also for a movie, you have to kind of raise the stakes. You have to kind of give this, you have to add some depth to it.
They did show something that like they wouldn't show on the TV show.
Yeah.
Are you talking about Bart?
Yep.
Yeah, Bart's noodle. Yeah,
Bart's noodle.
So
when I honestly did not remember that when I rewatched it. So.
I was shocked because that's another thing I remember from the trailer. I do remember him, riding around in the nude, and then he slams against the window with the tasteful censorship of a French fry perfectly placed. But I was not expecting them to do the thing where they exclusively show that part of Bart's anatomy. And it got me good.
Yeah, me too. I got really surprised because I was like, oh, this shot is so funny because it's like everything is perfectly, you know, covering
Right.
his doodle, and then this one part, everything is covering everything but his doodle. So it's perfect.
No,
Pretty funny.
for a second, I mean, I know I said I didn't remember, but for after I thought about it, after we saw it, I was like, for a second, I thought that maybe Disney would like have censored it,
Hmm.
but surprisingly, they didn't, which is crazy.
I was surprised that it still had that Mickey Mouse joke.
Yeah, I was also gonna mention that one. If you
Yeah.
guys don't remember, Bart literally makes fun of Mickey Mouse. Uh, I'm an evil corporation, something.
I was just reading. Apparently, they're not allowed to use Mickey Mouse anymore. They can use any Disney character, but they're banned from using Mickey Mouse. It's the one they're not allowed to touch now.
I was just, not to get too into Disney censorship of The Simpsons, but there is the only episode that I know of that has been banned. There's an episode from the very early seasons where Michael Jackson was a guest star called "Stark Raving Dad" in season 3, and after the Finding Neverland documentary came out a few years ago, Disney, they pulled that. Or no, I don't think Disney Plus had come out at that point, but that episode has never been on. So the only, that episode is more or less banned. It's
Mm.
at least it's not being actively included by Disney as part of the show. It's I know it's a topic of some controversy. And again, that YouTuber I mentioned earlier did a very interesting video, kind of explaining both sides of it. But anyway, that's like the only censorship that I can think of in terms of any particular episode kind of having, being pulled back like that. But yeah, in terms of getting back to the movie, it's funny because first of all, there's an episode where there's an episode in season 9 called "Natural Born Kissers," where basically like for second half of it's like Homer and Marge are trying to spice up their marriage, and one thing leads to another, and they have to and they're somehow trapped without their clothes, and they have to find their way home. And a lot of the second half of that episode is just different jokes about how they cover up their their bodies so that they're not exposing themselves. And so there's a lot of interesting kind of visual humor in that episode. And so, like you said, completely the opposite of that in the movie, where it's definitely drawing attention to Bart, exposing himself there. So
Yeah,
I don't
if I
know,
may,
but it must have been like a little uncomfortable for whoever drew that, because obviously it has to be like drawn and
No,
animated.
no, man, that's probably like the most fun thing you can probably animate. I
A little
think.
doodle.
Yeah. JP, think about how many dick drawings you drew on my like tests and quizzes.
God damn, you don't
You know,
expose me like that. We're having a super bad moment here.
Hey, Sean, though, sort of to that point, um, you talked about how many of these faces, the animation team was able to spend, detail putting in all these characters. You talk about, some of the, irreverent humor or the dark humor, whether it's Bart's doodle or the nooses and things like that. Homer flicking everybody off at one point. Um, Again, on Wikipedia, the free encyclopedia, I was looking through some of the, uh, the critical responses at the time, and I saw that the monthly critic Luke Davies pointed out that, in their opinion, uh, the film feels like 3 episodes strung together. We're in a cinema and we expect something epic, but they felt that, in time, in the great arc that is the history of The Simpsons, this film will come to be seen as oddity rather than apotheosis. And so I was sort of struck reading that, because I felt that the scope of this film did seem what I imagined to be bigger than your average Simpsons episode, even a multi-part episode. What do you think?
yeah,
In the terms of the things they could do and get away with.
that's interesting because before the movie, the most epic sort of series or set of episodes they did was I don't know if you guys have ever seen it. Who Shot Mr. Burns? It was
oh yeah.
yeah, the double part episode in the 90s where
I think
they
I've seen it.
yeah, I mean, it was really good. I mean, it was sort of like a parody of the Who Shot JR from that, I think the show called Dallas way
Dallas,
back in the
yeah.
80s. So it was kind of a parody of that, but Yeah, it was like this 2-part cliffhanger episode. Like part one was the last episode of season 6, and they set up this whole mystery. Like somebody shoots Mr. Burns, and they you have to figure out who did it, and it turns out it was Maggie. Spoiler alert.
Oh, I didn't remember that.
So anyway, like that was like I would say that was the most epic thing they had done up to that point. And I mean, it's pretty good. Great story, really good mystery, a lot of hilarious, iconic, solid jokes. So I would definitely say the movie feels bigger than that. Even I mean, it doesn't get much bigger, I think, than the impending destruction of Springfield. The U.S. government there was going to essentially annihilate the whole town and everybody within it.
Literally kill everyone.
Yeah. And yeah, I definitely I don't feel like it's 3 episodes stitched together. I don't think that.
Although
I
they
don't
do have
agree.
a good joke about that. To be
Very
continued.
beginning. Oh no.
Yeah.
Uh,
Well,
I
they
thought-
have like a cliffhanger right in the middle of the movie.
yeah.
To be continued immediately, and then it just keeps going. Yeah.
No, I thought you were gonna mention the very beginning where it's like, they're it starts off with the movie that they're in the movie, and then Homer's like, "Why would I pay to see something they can see for free on TV?" And like everyone here is an idiot or something. And except
Especially you.
and you.
Yeah, that was good too. Yeah. I was definitely struck by that though, because I don't know, like I said, as a non-fan, as sort of this impartial observer of sorts, I was like, boy, I don't know. I mean, the stakes seemed high. The emotional stakes seemed surprisingly high to me, higher than I expected them to be. And definitely, I think, the quality of the visuals and, like I said, even like the tone in darkness or in, risque-ness of the comedy seemed to
Very
be
risque.
heightened. Yeah. Than what you would see on television. So I definitely felt like this was sort of a worthy movie of The Simpsons.
Yeah.
And reading Wikipedia too, it did seem like that was one of the things that really delayed the movie for so long, is that, the creators, the writing team really wanted to work and make sure that this was, a worthy movie.
A movie that's like that has a plot that's long enough for a whole movie,
Yeah.
I guess it just feels like that for like any cartoon movie. I don't know if you guys have seen the Bob's Burgers movie.
I
have
have
not
not.
yet.
I have not.
Yeah.
I know it just came out. I
Okay.
know it just came out on. It was just released to Hulu yesterday, so no spoilers.
Yeah,
I
so
definitely have. I have every
I'm the only
intention of watching
person.
it.
I'm the only person who's seen it from here. But I'll tell you guys right now, same thing. It's the same thing with the Simpsons movie. I mean, I know it doesn't feel like 3 episodes, but yeah, I guess the stakes do feel bigger and everything. But I don't know. I guess you could probably argue the same thing for any cartoon movie like that. I don't. I
Yeah.
can't name any other ones off the top of my head.
I have
apart
a
from that.
perfect example. Well, no, you're right. Like almost every cartoon movie, it kind of almost follows this. It's almost I don't want to say cookie cutter, but it's I'm just realizing how common it is. Like perfect example is the Hey Arnold movie. I don't know if
I never
Oh.
watched Hey Arnold.
well so it was very critically panned. It's actually it just turned 20 years old about a month ago. The Hey Arnold movie came out. I think it was June of 2002. And basically, Arnold has to save his whole city from this evil corporation that wants to tear it down and build a giant shopping mall. So, in hindsight, probably that corporation should be thanking its lucky stars that this project didn't go through, because shopping malls are so endangered these days. But yeah, a lot of people thought that movie just was so different from the tone of the show, and it got very critically panned, and kind of, I don't want to say killed the show, but it definitely, I don't think it's one of
It
Nickelodeon's
did kill the follow-up movie, because we didn't
Yeah.
get that until just a few years ago.
The Jungle movie.
But
Yeah,
right,
yeah.
right.
Nah,
But
I was never a fan of Hey Arnold, so sorry about that.
Oh, I mean, I liked it. I wouldn't say it was one of my favorite cartoons from back then, but I watched it I the time, but I wouldn't.
I
say
think it's a great show.
I mean, I
but-
think it's good, but I wouldn't say it's my favorite. As opposed to
No,
say
no,
SpongeBob
we know
or,
which one's your favorite.
But
No,
that
I
must be
mean-
a hard balance to thread, though, between like making it feel cinematic, but also making it feel like The Simpsons. Like, you want to see The Simpsons for a reason. And if you make the movie too different from that, like maybe Hey Arnold did, you know, who do you please?
Yeah. I mean, the Simpsons movie did kind of touch on something that I don't think they've ever touched on before. I mean, the whole environment thing. I mean, it's a topic that even today, like on real life, people need to talk about. But I mean, I was surprised as you were, Peter, that
Yeah.
this was in a Simpsons movie. But I mean, they did it in a funny way.
Yeah.
So I'd say it was successful in somewhat, but I guess not really because we still need to talk about that. But whatever.
Yeah. I would
Yeah,
say
it didn't
that.
work.
Well, I would say
It hasn't
that.
worked yet. Yeah.
I would say that
Even the loss of Green Day, even the loss of Green Day
Yeah,
Oh
dude.
wasn't
I
enough.
forgot Green Day died in this movie.
Oh, I think that I just want to say, Rogue, that I thought that was a really funny joke at the very beginning when Green Day is singing the Simpsons theme song and they're reading the lyrics and it's just da, 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 da. I always thought that's a really funny joke.
Yeah.
Oh, and then like they do the whole Titanic, playing their violins as they go down with the
Yeah.
ship. That's a really funny joke. But I was just going to say that it's interesting because I think The Simpsons has always sort of pulled on the environmentalism thread because one of the recurring, well, there's a recurring character. It's a three-eyed fish
Oh, yeah.
that is because it's a mutation from the nuclear power plant, and so there's a number of episodes where they talk about environmental issues that are sometimes caused by Mr. Burns in the power plant. There's a very memorable episode where Lisa Mr. Burns team up to build a factory that doesn't quite go the way that Lisa wants it to. And I know Lisa in particular, sort of in the later seasons, becomes much more outspoken about environmentalism. There's actually a very memorable episode where Paul McCartney guest stars. And as one of the conditions for that, I think it's called Lisa the Vegetarian, season 7. Great episode. But Paul McCartney guest stars in it. But as one of the conditions, they had to agree to make Lisa permanently vegetarian, which they did. So,
Wow.
so they, made that a permanent character change, and that's
Like
rare
Paul
because
McCartney requested that?
yeah, that was one of the conditions. The producers went to him and said, he's a well-known vegetarian, and they said, hey, can you come on and do a guest appearance? And he said, oh, on one condition, you have to make Lisa permanently vegetarian, which they did.
I didn't know that.
I didn't know that either.
Season 7 onward.
That's kind of like Shaggy from Scooby Doo.
Is that
they made him vegan for like a long time.
is that after or before the movie? That's before, right?
Well, just as a side note, I think I can almost guarantee that that's because of Casey Kasem, his voice actor, who another outspoken vegetarian, one of my personal heroes. I love his radio show, American Top 40. Listen to it every week. Casey Kasem, awesome guy. And Peter, I just figured this out yesterday. We're from the Pittsburgh area. Casey Kasem actually used to do commercials for Heinz ketchup back in the 70s. So I just does it all.
Oh, I didn't know.
I just figured that out.
Our Pittsburgh natives out there are still reeling from some Heinz ketchup news, but I won't bore the main part of your audience about that.
Wait,
but
no,
yeah.
I'm very curious. What happened with ketchup? What's going on?
Oh, not so much ketchup.
For
but,
years, the Steelers, football stadium was known as Heinz Field for like the past 20 some years.
The ketchup stadium?
Yeah, Heinz Field. Yeah, it was the main
yeah,
sponsor, and so it's Heinz Field.
Mm-hmm.
But
Heinz, Heinz ketchup got its start in Pittsburgh many years ago, and to this, even though they have not made Heinz ketchup in Pittsburgh since the 90s, but people in Pittsburgh and the Pittsburgh area still feel they're very proud and very fond of Heinz. It's something that people in Pittsburgh are just super attached to. And so the other day, after 20 years, they announced that they're renaming the stadium to some. It's like I think called Acrisure. It's some insurance company or something from Michigan that nobody's ever heard of, and it's just it's just a real blow after having your stadium named after an iconic local company. It just to go to something some bland, generic, out of state company at that.
Yeah, I mean it's maybe not
kind of
quite as easy to pronounce. Yeah, like
for
the memes have been plentiful. The memes have been flowing like water.
Guess they just ran out of ketchup. That's why they probably renamed it.
Yeah, so it's
so just tip of the hat to all of our Pittsburgh listeners out there, I suppose.
Yeah, sorry to get way off topic here.
No, don't worry about it.
We go off topic all the time.
So that's I just wanted to say that I think environmentalism has always kind of been one of the running themes of the show, just because of the power plant, and that sets up a lot of storylines. For sort of, they satirize, how big business doesn't care about the environment, or how maybe the government can kind of look the other way, because of their uneasy alliance with big business. And, I know they've sort of done a few episodes about that, but yeah, I don't think anything even close to the scope of the movie, where, again, literally.
Yeah, because this was like more of like the people were doing it. Like the people were the ones that were harming the environment, not just like the nuclear power plant.
It's not just Mr. Burns. It's
It's everybody
Yeah.
jumping in the lake.
And also, surprisingly, like Mr. Burns was barely in the movie. Probably like like a minute, maybe.
I don't remember him having a major part or anything like that. I think he has a big role in a lot of episodes, but in the movie, I just wanted to say, and I know I've been doing a lot of talking here, but what's interesting about the main villain, Russ Cargill, the guy from the EPA. So he is voiced by Al Brooks.
He's Finding Nemo's dad.
Yeah,
Marlin. Yeah.
But more specifically on The Simpsons, he voiced what a lot of fans would argue is their favorite guest star, a guy named Hank Scorpio. He was in an episode in season 8 called "You Only Move Twice," and it's one of the most beloved Simpsons episodes. And Al Brooks voiced that character, and he's voiced a few others over the course of the show. So every few seasons he'll do, at the time he was doing a guest appearance, and so they made him kind of the villain of the movie. They thought about bringing back Hank Scorpio for that, but they just made him a new character that more or less had the same sort of evil qualities. And then what's interesting too about the president. So president, obviously it's Arnold Schwarzenegger.
Mm-hmm.
It's interesting because the Simpsons already had a character making fun of him, Rainier Wolfcastle. They already had a character sort of, as a satire of Arnold Schwarzenegger, but they very interestingly went with the real guy to be president. And I think at the time, I know he was governor of California, so it was kind of, I guess it was kind of a timely joke.
Well, on that note, on Wikipedia, I had read that George Bush was the president at that time, but Groening had decided that in like a couple years that's going to be out of date. So like let's go with the fictional president. So it doesn't have that sort of dated aspect to it. And then also, apparently, it was because they were realizing that maybe not enough casual fans that would come to see the movie like knew Hank Scorpio or kind of resonated with that character, that they decided to, well, let's bring back Albert Brooks, but come up with a new character for him.
Yeah. Sadly, I don't know that character, so sorry about that.
Oh, and no,
exactly.
Peter,
no, exactly.
Peter, you just that's a very good point, because like you said earlier, it's like, how do you make it accessible to people that have never seen the show, but also kind of sprinkle in things for longtime fans? And I think that's a perfect example. It's like you bring back this, this voice, and essentially it's the same character, just by a different name and sort of in a different design, but it's the same kind of character. It's the same personality, the same sort of manipulative, evil, scheming sort of, executive that is kind of the villain. So I think, long-term fans, they probably knew once they heard that voice and saw how this character acted, they certainly, I think, were able to figure out like, oh, this is definitely like a Hank Scorpio sort of character.
Right. And speaking of like, so there were some things that they made concessions for more general audience members, but then I also was made aware of different, like you said, nods to the fans, including different background characters, and also like I noticed like an ambulance that was like crashed on the side in one scene, and I'm told that that's a reference to a previous episode.
That is another iconic episode. It's season 2. It's a very early episode called Bart the Daredevil, where Bart is trying to emulate this sort of Evel Knievel-like character, and he's doing all these dangerous stunts. And so Homer is trying to show Bart that, no, don't do this. This is dangerous. So Homer tries to skateboard over Springfield Gorge, and he doesn't make it. and one of the ambulances that tries to rescue him crashes into the tree. And it's, in other episodes, they sort of make that joke. They have that little kind of sight gag as a little reward for longtime viewers.
That's cool. I mean, it sounds to me like this movie really thread the needle really well between being, acceptable for people like me who'd never seen any of it to really come in and really enjoy it. I really enjoyed the movie. But then also, from what I'm hearing, for longtime fans to really feel like they were fulfilled and like they got their money's worth from the show that they loved.
Yeah. Now, I mean, talking about longtime fans and everything, or the kind of like the future, like, oh, in a couple of years this won't be relevant or anything. Obviously, The Simpsons has a reputation of kind of predicting the future. So, I mean, Sean, is there anything from the movie that has been predicted into now our future?
Yeah, that's a good question. I'm trying to think. I can't.
I mean,
Well-
apart from I guess like the environment thing.
Yeah. I mean, that's.
Well, I was gonna say on, I guess a lighter note, Maggie does say sequel as her first word, so I hear that's still rumbling about. So, but that doesn't really count. I know that doesn't really answer your question.
Maybe.
I can't remember anything specifically that they predict from the movie that has sort of come true. And
Wasn't Itchy's or Scratchy, I don't know which is which, running mate Hillary Clinton?
it would have been Itchy. And just just as a side note there, Peter, like that cartoon cartoon mouse and cat at the beginning of the movie, Itchy and Scratchy. That's another long running Simpsons sort of show within a show. Obviously, it's like a parody of Tom and Jerry, another sort of mouse cat violence. And they've been the basis of a lot of I would say pretty good episodes over the show's run, sort of satirizing like the animation industry and things like that. So
Sure.
So it was a very good choice, I think, to open the movie with that. Again, sort of something that even if you've never seen the show, you'll know right away, like, oh, this is a parody of Tom and Jerry.
Yeah.
You can, it's very accessible, but also obviously if you've seen the show, you laugh just because you know what to expect. Over the top violence with these two. So,
Yeah. Any other predictions true from this, Sean, buddy?
Nothing else from the movie, but
Yeah,
it's so impressive how they do it. Like I will never understand how they do it. Like definitely one guy from The Simpsons has to be a time traveler. Like there's no doubt about that, and no one can change my mind. I'm sorry.
Well, there's there's a really. I think some of it is luck. I think some of it, they just are, they can see the writing on the wall that stuff is going to go in a certain direction, and some of it just, like I said, I think just luck. Like obviously the big example that a lot of people talk about is they predict Donald Trump becoming president. They predicted that 16 years before he was elected, and he at the time. And so I watched again this Real Gyms I think it was this or somebody else that explained it that so in 2000 Donald Trump had run for president as a third party candidate, and whenever they wrote that episode that would have still been in the news. That's kind of what they speculate. So it doesn't seem as out of the blue once you look at it that way, but still it's like still the fact that they made that joke in 2000 and he gets elected ultimately 16 years later, it's still pretty interesting. Just that they got that right. And
yeah, I mean that's what I'm saying. Like someone from The Simpsons is a time traveler, but they have to hide it somehow. They can't get it every time.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah. Throw us off the scent.
Another great joke like that I remember is there's an episode where they predict that they predict in like 1998, I think it was, they predicted that eventually Disney and ABC would own a lot of other media companies, including Fox. So they predict that was just, I think, like a prediction that just, they made and turned out to be completely true. But yeah, it's uncanny, I think. In a lot of episodes, especially the older ones, they just nailed a lot of things. But yeah, in terms of the movie itself, I can't remember a whole lot of predictions, but I did want to ask Peter a question. Just again, it was somebody that hasn't seen the series, and so what obviously okay. Let me phrase it this way. what did you think about the whole, obviously the main plot is about Homer and having to save the town. What did you think about the subplot of, Bart, kind of interacting with Ned Flanders, kind of trying to figure out who's a better father figure for him?
Right.
What did
That's
you?
actually a question that comes back to a question I had for you, actually.
Oh, yeah.
And I was like, my heart was so warmed by Ned Flanders in the film, and I thought that was a great use of him and a great use of Bart. And, I because he seemed, so genuine,
Mhm.
and, like it didn't really seem like the show was making fun of him all that much. Obviously Homer would, but apart from a couple moments here and there, like the show kind of seemed to treat the movie seemed to sort of treat him with dignity. And I thought that was a great subplot. And my question for you is this before or after the Flanderization of Ned Flanders? Because it seemed so,
Yeah.
he seemed so like great to me,
Yeah.
of a character in this world.
Yeah, no, that's a great question. And I think I would say it was definitely after people started to notice the
Mm,
Flanderization. And I think something I just wanted to kind of speak to more broadly was kind of where this movie falls within the Simpsons history, because even at the time, the Simpsons has they've been making episodes since 1989. Even by the early 2000s, people were saying, "Oh, this show's it's not what it used to be. It's going downhill. The quality is terrible." Everything after season 10 or so, I think, is sort of kept. They people don't really think of that as the golden age. And so I think with the movie, I think they were trying again, like threading that needle of, oh, excuse me, threading that needle of trying to bring in new viewers, but also kind of throw a bone to the longtime fans. I think they were trying to sort of write the characters more in line with what people might remember from the golden age. And so I
interesting.
think before the movie and like the few seasons before the movie, Ned Flanders had sort of started to become more, he's a very interesting character, very interesting history. And in the few years before the movie, his character had sort of become a lot more, you know, he obviously he's most well known for being super religious, super, devout Christian. But they were sort of portraying him, I think, in the seasons before the movie. They were kind of showing the dark sides of that,
Mm,
judgmental and, kind of uptight, very, inflexible, sort of, intolerant of other faiths, all of
mm,
those things, kind of an overbearing parent to his two kids. By that point in the show, he had been widowed. They had killed his wife off in season 11. Um, so anyway, I think the fact that you find him portrayed so sympathetically is very interesting to me, because I think in the seasons leading up to the movie, they had kind of written him in a more, I don't want to say aggressive way, but certainly not the most sympathetic all the time. Sometimes they do, but I think in that era to sort of satirize a more, a hard-edged, intolerant side of like evangelical Christianity in the U.S. And so, very interesting that in the movie that
yeah.
you kind of got this more sympathetic, more well-rounded portrayal of him.
Well, and you said
Uh,
it sounds like they sort of circled back around to that a little bit, because there was just the one moment where he was like, I wish my son didn't have the devil's
Yeah,
curly hair.
yeah.
That that was one moment that was like clearly making fun of him,
mhm.
the movie. But things like, you want some, hot cocoa? He's like, no. He's like, well, I'll just leave it
Dude,
here.
I wanted to drink that hot cocoa so bad.
I thought that like it
It
was
does
funny
look
the more
good.
he added to it, but like it was like the gesture rang true to me. And
Mhm.
the way he's like, I'll just leave it here if you want, And his constant reiteration of like, I mean, he knows Homer's always a jerk to him, but he feels like deep down somewhere Homer would do the same for him. And it just it reverberated with me. And now, Sean, do you think any of that has anything to do with the fact that there were a lot of classic Simpsons writers coming back to
I,
work
I
on this?
I would say so. I think, I mean, I don't think it hurt them at all to have kind of put the band back together for this movie, kind of get some of the people that hadn't worked on it in years, get them back into the writer's room and bring that perspective. I know SpongeBob did a similar thing. They brought back some of the old, the writers, for, wasn't, am I wrong on that, Peter? Like, I think, wasn't it for like the more,
Some of the
the,
more recent seasons, yeah.
yeah, they brought back some of the writers from the earlier stuff to sort of try to harken back to that early, to the golden era of that show. So I think definitely the Simpsons movie benefited from that. And I think, like I said, I think you can see that Ned Flanders is portrayed in a more sympathetic light. And just more generally, I think it's interesting because, again, one of the themes of the show, the very, very first episode actually, is Homer has always kind of felt very insecure around Ned Flanders. He's always felt like Flanders is just a little bit better than him, and he always is. He's always kind of felt insecure with his own family, in light of Flanders and what he's got going on next door. So I can, I'm sure you saw that it was just it really annoyed Homer, to see Bart sort of uh, spending more time with the Flanders family.
Yeah.
Yeah,
I
that's what I'm
mean,
saying. I was shocked by the emotional stakes of this movie. Yeah, go ahead,
I
JP.
mean, I was just gonna say that they did not have to make that Coco look so good. It
Yeah.
looked way too good. But talk about Homer. I mean, like, as you're saying about always seeing Ned, Flanders, right next to him, being like, I guess, what you would call like the perfect example of like, or a perfect husband, maybe, or a perfect dad or something. Uh, it's funny that like he sees that every single day, but he doesn't change,
Yeah.
and he has to learn about that again in the movie. It's a like it's a big plot
Yeah.
line in the movie.
Yeah, I think, and just another example is that in the seasons leading up to the movie, I would say starting around like season 9, going through well into the teen seasons, a lot of the longtime fans of the show had sort of become disenchanted because of what they called jerk ass Homer. So if you go on any Simpsons message board or any Simpsons discussion, you'll see that term used a lot, and they feel like Homer. He was always kind of like written like this, kind of like stupid, a little bit dim-witted sometimes, but all kind of a jerk at times, but ultimately had a heart of gold. And a lot of people felt getting into the teen seasons that he was kind of losing that. And so I certainly think in that, and again in the movie they I think they go out of their way to show that they try to have Homer go through this kind of character arc of redemption and putting because they show him like he's definitely very he definitely shows some jerk ass Homer in the movie, no question.
Oh yeah.
But
Yeah.
they also they also show him atoning for that. So I think that's a very interesting and I think a very good choice that they made.
Yeah, I did.
Yeah, I've got.
Sorry.
Sorry, go ahead. Go ahead. Sam.
Okay, I was just gonna say I did not like Homer at all at the beginning of the movie, and
Yeah.
I don't
I think it's done on
remember.
purpose.
I don't remember that many episodes, but I'm pretty sure I don't remember him being like
Yeah.
that big of a jerk or that big of a dumb character.
True. True,
So,
true,
Yeah.
true.
I was pretty surprised with the character development.
Interesting. Well, that's interesting because to me, that was sort of my understanding of the character of him kind of being a. I don't want to say a bully to his children, but kind Bart in particular, but kind of being more self-centered and obviously kind of a dummy
He
in some
just
things.
plays rough with his son.
Like I've definitely seen the image of him like strangling his son, a lot, in popular culture. So that definitely rang true to me as the character, and it made me sort of feel that this movie, to me, kind of seemed like, correct me if I'm wrong, Sean, like the culmination of a lot of ideas and themes of the show, like a resolution of a lot of things, like Homer's maybe you could say bad parenting in some ways, or Homer not paying enough attention to his wife and his family, or his lack of respect for Ned Flanders, so this sort of seemed like this was almost like a finale, with all these epiphanies and developments and resolutions. I have to wonder though, like I presume all of that just sort of like disappeared once the show continued again. Even like Colin, like does Colin ever come back?
No.
I have to assume not.
And okay. I'm glad you brought him up
Bono's kid?
because
Bono's kid. I always thought
Yeah,
he was like a
exactly.
little
Yeah.
Ed Sheeran.
Dad's not Bono.
yeah, that it's interesting because I think just again another example of like an accommodation that they made for people that weren't as familiar with the show. They bring in this Colin character when anybody who's watched the show knows that Milhouse is the one that has a massive crush on Lisa, but they didn't want you to have to know that going into it. So they brought in this kind of this one-time character that he's never. I don't recall him. I'm not saying he hasn't because I'm not at all familiar with some of the more recent episodes, but I don't think he ever became a major character in the show after the movie. So,
So like I have to assume like like because this movie gives a really interesting sense of closure, like I said, to like you know Homer as a dad, his
Yeah.
connection with Flanders and his wife, the stuff with his wife was, I mean, heart wrenching.
Yeah.
With Marge, but yeah, and then with Colin. So in that ways, it sort of reminds me of, we're comparing it to other things like the SpongeBob movie, for instance, like the first one. Like it also feels like this culmination of him being a child and reaching maturity and becoming the manager of the Krusty Krab too, and then that's never heard of again. So it's sort of like that. You're saying?
Yeah, I would say so. It's like, yeah, in The Simpsons overall, it's kind of like that. There's not, again, with the exception of, for example, like, Lisa becoming a vegetarian. There's not really a whole lot of long term, or Ned Flanders is, his wife getting killed off.
Right, right.
You don't have a whole lot of status quo changes to the show.
I see. So it's it comes with the territory.
So, just in general, they don't have a whole lot of big changes that they stick with. But certainly, I think it could be frustrating because I think you're right. The movie can be seen as a finale, kind of the culmination of a lot of these long running themes. And then, yeah, like they just start up with the next episode and it's all kind of forgotten. I mean, I think they make a few jokes in, the episodes that come out right after the movie. I think they make a few jokes or references to things like Spider Pig or one of the blackboard gags, I think. Maybe a reference to the movie. But yeah, it's you see, Homer goes back to being a jerk a lot of the time. He still is not the best father. Of course, his relationship with Marge can get very strained.
Sure.
So it's,
yeah, that's sort of what I thought. Yeah, I mean, it feels like it's sort of like a finale for a show that hasn't ended yet. Like maybe someday you could chronologically place this at the end.
I mean,
of
would you
things,
have liked it to
maybe.
been a finale if this movie came out after the 33rd season?
That's a question for you, Sean.
Yeah, I have very mixed feelings on it because on the one hand, I think it's really cool in a way that they're still making episodes that the same show has been on, voiced by the same people, 30 some years. I mean, I think that's a remarkable achievement. I think it's really cool. It's kind of, I don't know, it's like not that it's something you can count on, but it's kind of, we've been through so many changes in the last 30 some years. It's kind of, and all through that time, we've had The Simpsons as kind of a constant companion for that, which is, it's comforting in a way. It's just something that, it seems like it'll always be around, but it won't. I mean, at some point, um, things will change. And so, but on the other hand, I think with Breaking Bad, for example, they could have extended the show. It became incredibly popular in its last couple of seasons. They could have ordered more episodes, but they didn't because they knew what story they wanted to tell. They didn't want to stretch it out. They didn't want to, pad it just to make money. So they ended it when they did, and they kind of went out on a really high note. I mean, they went out with a tremendous critical acclaim. So I think I definitely, I think it's, I don't know. Like I think The Simpsons will always have a very notable legacy, but I guess I would not that I think the people that work on the show today work very hard, and this is nothing against them, but I also think I think any say the show ends now, I think it would be very very much the consensus that of the must see episodes, 99% of them are going to be from like seasons 1 through 10, and so a lot of those other 20 seasons are you might every episode has at least a few good jokes, but they're not breaking new ground. They're not telling new stories. A lot of people would say nowadays that they're the show that is trying to catch up to others, whereas in the past, they were the leader. They were at the vanguard. They were the the spearhead of a lot of changes and a lot of new things in animation. So I don't know. I think I'm like I said, I'm glad they've kept it going for so long, but I also, if they ended it, if they had ended it with the movie in 2007, I think that would have been fine too. I don't really think they've broken a whole lot of new ground in the past 15 years of episodes that would necessarily warrant keeping the show going. But
I mean, would you be happy if they ended it with another movie then?
Yeah, I don't know. That's another good question.
Like to me, it like a movie seems like a good finale or
Yeah,
something.
absolutely.
I mean, I don't know if you guys have ever seen Community.
Yes, yes.
Peter got me into that
So
actually. Yeah.
yeah, so I love the idea of 6 seasons in a movie. Of course, the
Yeah.
Community movie still hasn't come out, but I don't know. To me,
Come
like
on, Dan.
it makes sense. So I think if it was like that, it would be nice for a lot of shows, not just The Simpsons, not just Community. So maybe more shows should do that stuff. But I guess it is kind of hard to make a whole movie out of maybe 20-minute episodes.
Yeah, yeah, it's definitely. And Peter, you probably read this when you were doing your research, but you might have seen that they'd been trying to do a Simpsons movie for a long time since
Yeah.
the early '90s, and in fact, they initially planned to do it in the early '90s with an episode called Camp Krusty, but they I don't think they could get enough. They couldn't stretch it out into a full movie, so they just made it a regular episode, although particularly memorable one, I would say. So they've been
Yeah. Well,
trying for
Matt.
a long time.
Well,
I know,
well,
to get the movie made.
well, Matt Groening said something to the effect that he had always planned to sort of end the series with this movie, but like he said, like the ratings kept doing well, the show kept doing well, so eventually it was like, well, I guess let's just make the movie now, But
Yeah.
that was his plan, was to end the series with a movie, but alas, the series has not ended. So yeah, I mean, we'll see what happens with this next one. Maybe that's a way to gracefully bring it to a close. I don't know, but
Yeah,
while we're on the note too, Dan Harmon, we know you listen to the show. Let's make it happen. Let's get that
Yeah,
movie.
Dan Harmon is one of the few listeners of our show. He's one of our biggest fans.
Oh yeah.
So
Oh,
Dan
we know it.
Harmon,
Don't we
we're
know it?
waiting for that movie. I'm looking straight at the camera right now. Dan Harmon, we're waiting for that movie.
So, guys, real question here: where does Marge rank on Cartoon Moms?
Oh, cartoon moms. I mean,
Where does she rank?
gotta be up there. Gotta be up there.
I would say I like Marge a lot more than I like, say, Lois Griffin or
Yeah,
what's her name?
dude, Dexter,
Linda Belcher. I mean,
Dexter's
I like
mom.
Linda, but yeah, I kind of forgot about her. Even like Dee Dee Pickles or
Oh yeah.
who else?
Wasn't
I can't.
Marge like on Playboy magazine? Wasn't she on the cover of?
Oh
I believe
God.
she did do that a few years ago. Yeah,
Interesting.
she did they did a Playboy photo shoot of her. Sort of. I
Why?
don't want to say like. I mean, I guess kind of a little bit of it. Like, I think it was kind of tongue in cheek. It was kind of meant as a little bit of a joke.
Yeah.
But also just I think a lot of what The Simpsons is notable for in the more recent age, just kind of getting back to what I was saying about you've done so many episodes, what keeps it fresh? And I mean, the very, very few of the more recent episodes that I have watched have been sort of these more novelty experiments. Like there's an episode where, for example, it's all there. It's animated in Legos.
Oh
which
wow.
it's pretty cool.
Oh,
It's an interesting visual.
I've seen
So
some.
they do some other. Yeah.
Sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off, but I was just gonna say I've seen some
no.
interesting like the couch gags from the beginning. I've seen.
Yeah.
Because there's an artist I follow on Twitter, and they got to work on one of the couch gags, which I thought was really cool. I saw another Treehouse of Horror or Terror. I forgot the name, but it was like 3D animation instead of the regular 2D animation. So stuff like that is pretty cool.
Yeah, absolutely. If there's any episode I tend to watch from the more recent stuff, it is usually the Treehouse of Horror. Because they usually are, they have a relatively up to date parody of something, whether it's like the presidential election or some movie or something else. But yeah, you're definitely right on that. That the couch gags in particular are what a lot of people were paying attention to. Not even the episode itself. Just they did one with Rick and Morty. They've done.
I've seen that one. Yeah.
I remember the one where
they do a lot of
anime characters also.
Yeah.
Oh, dude.
Interesting.
I think I've seen there's like a Homer Simpson's anime, like just like a little clip on something that someone did, like an anime intro. I fucking love when they do that.
If I can reference Marge too, and sort of artfully dodge your question though, but mention like I mean she definitely means a lot to Homer, and I want to make sure I say this in this episode because like that's something I really wasn't expecting. I wasn't expecting that scene where she essentially leaves him. I think it was beautifully acted, beautifully shot. Her recording over, her VHS of their wedding that she ran through the fire to get earlier in the movie. Just the way, him watching it, like when the tape like cuts back to the original, and for a moment you see like Homer's eyes, like the way he's looking at her watching it, and it goes back to them the way they were, and we hear the music, which is apparently very important to them, the Carpenters.
Yeah, it's They Long to Be Close to You, and that's like their song throughout the show. Like
Right.
that is their song. From one of the very one, I think it was the earliest flashback episode in season 2.
Yeah.
That's kind of established as their song.
I was
Yeah.
really moved by that, and even like, they took a joke from the beginning, the worst day of your life so far, and then they kind of made that kind of like a sweet moment at the end, the best kiss of your life so far. A nice way to sort of bookend the movie, his journey. These are the things I wasn't expecting going into this movie. I was sort of flabbergasted by the heart that this movie had, which isn't really something I necessarily associate with The Simpsons from what I've seen of the trailers or bits and pieces of popular culture.
Yeah. It was surprisingly very sweet.
Yeah, that in everything with Ned and Bart, exact same thing.
Yeah, I didn't remember those subplots when I rewatched it, but those were probably like my favorite things about the movie, specifically Homer's relationship with his family members.
He kind of like redeemed himself a little bit.
Yeah, for
Yeah.
sure.
But then he goes back to being a jerk in the show. So.
Apparently. But just, I think a really great character study of Homer Simpson, like from someone who doesn't know the character all that well. Yeah, and I think personally, my feeling is that like doing things like that, like really grounding something in real human emotion, real human issues, oftentimes can make the humor even funnier because like you're dealing in a real world, and so when something absurd happens, it's it resonates in a particularly funny way. But I was just sort of struck by like that this movie I felt really kind of had a point to make instead of just being silly. Even opening with the Itchy and Scratchy cartoon later on sort of hit me that like, oh yeah, when the can't remember the names, but when the mouse tries to get back at the cat to like cover up his mistake, that's basically what the EPA and tries to do later. They try to cover up their mistake by annihilating, the people involved. And then that also, I was like, well, that also applies to Homer, and the way he's constantly only thinking of himself and throwing other people under the bus, including his town and his own son early on in the movie, where he, the police stop him and he pushes all the blame on Bart instead. It's sort of this movie about, it kind of touched on this theme of like redirecting the blame and like covering the evidence of your mistakes instead of like taking the responsibility for your actions. And now maybe I might be biased because of our own podcast, but I think you could almost say that one of the themes in this movie is that with great power comes great responsibility.
Oh, way to bring it. Way to bring it around town. Oh, Peter.
Bring it around town.
And
There we go.
and that's all I'm saying. Just I was not expecting that level of depth and really like sort of philosophy and truth about human nature to be present in this Simpsons movie. And I mean, in conjunction with the humor, the movie blew me away.
I mean, there's two things Spider-Man related in this movie: Spider-Pig, and great power, great responsibility.
In the theme song that Danny Elfman wrote the theme song.
There you go.
Oh, yeah.
Three things. So this is basically a Spider-Man movie. This is a spin-off. This is a spin-off of Toby.
We always bring it back to Spider-Man.
It's always going to be a Spider-Man. This is just a Spider-Man show. We both have Spider-Man shows at this point.
Everything. Honestly, if you look deeply enough, everything's a Spider-Man show.
Yeah.
Hell yeah. There, I see Toby behind you, Peter. Toby's little toy there too. Yeah,
For sure.
It's everything Spider-Man, dude. But anyways, guys, I think we have to bring it to a close there. It was such fun time, such a fun episode. As I mentioned before, guys, please listen to So Much to Tell podcast on Spotify and Apple Podcasts. You guys have an amazing show. Right now, you guys only have 6 episodes, but I know you're working right now on another one.
Another one on the way. Yeah. Oh yeah. Got a couple recorded. One's on the way. So
awesome. Do you know
when it's coming? People.
Do you know when it's coming or not?
maybe by the time this comes out. So
Cool. All right.
wish me luck.
Well, yeah. Wish them luck. Now, please, guys, like I said, listen to them. Also, follow So Much to Tell on TikTok because you can see and hear clips of their show there. And also follow the Woteshko brothers, of course, on TikTok because I love their content. I'm always going to love their content. Such great videos, such funny videos.
Thanks.
Yes. Now, I think that's pretty much the end of the episode. Thank you guys so much for listening. Thank you guys for watching. Thank you guys so much for the support. And we'll see you guys next time. I've been JP.
Did we plug our app?
Oh, wow.
Oh yeah.
Thank you, Peter. You see, we're so bad at this. Even after a year. Thank you so much, Peter. Yes. If this is a movie that was in my queue, as you could say. Q, I thank you again for sponsoring us. They're an app on the App Store, not on Android yet, but they're on the App Store where you could Q movies, as the app is called, and you can give a little spin a wheel, and you can choose whatever movie. If you have trouble choosing a movie, it will choose it for you. And also, you can give a like, you could dislike, you could see what other people think of movies, and of course, it has a little community tab where you can go follow us and see what we think of the movies that we've seen. But yes, thank you guys so much.
The app definitely solves a problem in my life. So
Definitely,
want to make sure
yeah.
people know about it.
Of course, people have to know. They have to download the app because
People
I
must
use
know.
it. I use it, and everyone should use it. For if you love movies, you'll love this app. Pretty much. Now, I think that's pretty much the end of this episode. Now.
Yeah.